Jaya.
Saya bangga kuliah di sini. Saya mendapatkan ilmu yang banyak, terutama dalam bidang pendidikan.
Mari bergabung dengan Universitas Kuningan untuk mengembangkan potensi diri dan menyongsong masa depan yang lebih baik bersama dengan Universitas Kuningan.
Hidup Uniku, Uniku Jaya, menuju Kuningan, maju.
Okay, good afternoon ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second UNICET, Uniku International Conference on System Engineering and Technology. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, the parallel sessions have been completed, so we are now continuing our meeting to the next agenda, that is to hear the second plenary presentation that will be delivered by Professor Jeko Barkuzan from University of Limpopo, South Africa. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to apologize that Prof. Benny could not attend this international conference due to the extreme weather in United Kingdom. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to invite the moderator to chair these plenary sessions. Please, Dr. Dadang Solihat, MPD.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Endang. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second plenary presentation speakers that today or right now we have Professor Dr. Jeko. Hello, Professor.
Hey, good morning.
Nice to see you.
Good afternoon.
That's a different time, I think, over there, right?
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock in the morning.
Early morning. What time exactly over there?
It's now 9:58 p.m.
Oh, 9:58 in the morning. Okay.
Yes.
On behalf of the Universitas Kuningan and the committee, I would like to say thank you very much for your time. And then it is a very great time, I think, to hear about your presentations. And ladies and gentlemen, today we have the topic from Professor Jeko. It's about opportunities and challenges in environmental, social science, and humanity research during pandemic, COVID-19 era, and afterward. I think this is a very nice topic and material, I think, and then I believe that the audiences will pay attention to Professor presentations. Professor Jeko, time is yours.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Let me just share my screen here. I think there's just been a miscommunication. My presentation is victimology and green victimology, new ideas in a new science. So what I'm going to talk about is, why is victimology a new science? What is victimology? Why is victimology needed? What is green victimology? Where do we place green victimology? Green victimology and victimology, and what should the future of victimology look like? So first of all, seeing as this is social sciences, and victimology has a leg in social sciences, and it has a leg in law, and it's got three legs, a leg in medicine and medical legal things. So we need to look at what is victimology. So the word itself comes from Latin and Greek, which means victima from Latin, which means a victim, and logos, which means to study. So literally victimology is the study of victims. So the definition of the word only states that victimology is a scientific or theoretical study of victims. It does not state what type of victims, and how do we study these victims. So according to Kuhn, all science and scientific thinking is more a construction of social reality. Scientific thought and paradigms determine different reality. And it's shaped by, any science is shaped by what has come before it. So now the question is, what shaped victimology? Now you have the golden age of the victim. That is when we started to live in communities where the victims were seen to play a leading role in the resolution of crime and criminal matters. So, for example, in Europe, in Germany, you had Vergeld. In Ireland, you had Irgfinne, Galanas in the Welsh areas of the UK. And in Japan, also, the victims determined what happened to the offenders. And it still happens in certain areas in Indonesia. I've done some research. But the more we became bigger communities and the more we gave kings power and we gave presidents power and judges power, the less and less power victims had in the resolution of victimization and criminal justice issues. So it took a couple of centuries before the victim became part of this debate on justice again. And that was thanks to Cesar Beccaria. So some of you legal and social science scholars will remember this name. He started what we call the modern criminal justice system, or the ideas behind the modern justice system. So Kirchhoff states one can find a clear engagement on the side of the victim, the powerless, but he calls Beccaria precursor to victimology. I disagree. I would say Beccaria is the first victimologist, because if you read his work, it's all about protecting the individuals from the state, or protecting the individuals from the king, or protecting individuals from the church. But that is still a debate happening. So who was the first victimologist? So you have Benjamin Mendelssohn in 1947 that wrote one of the seminal works, and he's also one of the fathers of the three branches of victimology. Then we have Frederick Wertham that coined the term victimology. And then you have Hans von Hentig, which is sort of the accepted father of scientific victimology and founder of one of the branches. Now, before we merge everything together, we have to look at what is green victimology. So green or ecological victimology is a branch of green victimology, which emerged in the late 80s, early 90s. It's a branch of criminology that studies the harms and crimes against the environment broadly conceived, including the study of environmental law and policy, corporate crimes against the environment, environmental justice from a criminological perspective. And this is important to know. Green criminology is criminological. So we look at the offender, and that's the problem. So defining green victimology. Now, the complexity associated with the question, who is the victim, right? It's like, what is a victim? Who's a victim? This is what victimology tries to address. And I bring in the question as well, where should we put green victimology? Where should green victimology fall in this whole discussion? So there is the three branches that evolve in victimology that deals with this question, or try to deal with the question about what is a victim and where should green victimology fall. So you have special victimology, you have general victimology, and then you have victimology of human rights violations, including crime. So there's victimology as a science, and here you have the three branches. So for those of you who don't know, special victimology was started by our founder, Hans von Hentig, who he said any victimological study and research should be done under the auspices of criminology. So all special victimological research focuses only on victims of crime. Now, that is a problem. It's really restrictive and it's superfluous. Think about it. So for those of you that know, how does something become a crime? You know, it takes a while. You can have people being victimized before that victimization becomes encoded in the legal system as a crime. Now, he only focuses, according to Van Hente, we only should focus on victims of crime, crime victims. So what about if a crime only becomes a crime legally defined today? Anyone that suffered the victimization of this act before it became a legally defined crime, we should leave them alone. They don't matter. It's not important to special victimology. So you're excluding a group of people that have been victimized. Then we have general victimology. This was started by Mendelssohn. It focused on all victims, their suffering, on treating these victims. He was the first one to suggest victimological clinics, which today is our victim assistance centers. However, general victimology, in the name it says itself, is very broad. So you have the victims of a criminal, the victim of yourself, the victim of the social environment, victim of technology, and then the victim of the natural environment. Now, there's criticisms against this branch as well, is that it is too broad. I mean, for example, victim of oneself. Now, if you look at the definition, the scientifically accepted definition of what is a victimization, it's an invasion into the self, into that core you know, the part of you that you don't show the world, that causes harm. Now, you cannot logically victimize yourself, invade yourself. So that is illogical, and it's extremely broad. And remember, victimology in its core values try to prevent victimization from happening. So if you go by general victimology, how does one prevent a natural disaster like a tsunami or a typhoon? It's impossible, right? You cannot prevent a natural disaster from happening. However, it's how you react as a government or people after said natural disaster, or try and mitigate the natural disaster, which brings us to the last and final branch, which is victimology of human rights violations, including crime. Now, this was started in the late 70s to mid 80s by Elias and Newman, writings by Elias and Newman. They say human rights violations is an abuse of people in a way that violates fundamental rights. It's a term used when a government or a national, international institution violates national or international law related to the protection of human rights. Now, here we have fundamental human rights, right? This is according to the UN. Men and women are not treated as equal. That's Article 2. Differential, racial, religious group be treated as equal. Article 3, life, liberty, and security. Article 4, person assault, you know, cruelty. Here it's all. So, victimology of human rights violations, including crime. Now, why did we include crime? Because crime is a violation of Article 3. So this definition is not as broad as general and not as restrictive as special victimology. And it's the most comprehensive definition we currently have. So, includes crime victims, it includes non-crime victims, and it's grounded in international law. It should be noted that even though these three definitions of victimology differ on the definition of victim, all three branches is interested in the process of becoming a victim. It looks at institutions, social, individual, and group conditions. And it looks at how people react to victim and how people react to being victimized. So in a meta-level definition, victimology is the scientific study of the victims of human rights violations, including crimes, of victimization and reaction of both victims and society. So let's go back to defining green victimology. So as we saw, classic victimology considers human as victims. Green victimology holds that human and nature, and including the components like water, oil, soil, trees, plants, animals, and a few could be green victims. Why? As a human, you don't live in a vacuum. You walk on soil, you breathe air, you have sunlight. You are not in a victim separated from your environment. So there's two philosophical and legal approaches to green victimology. There's the intrinsic value of the environment. Can it be a victim? Then you have the anthropocentric argument. Nature is regarded as a human right, therefore only humans can be victims of environmental victimization. Then you have the nature-orientated approach, which is nature can be a victim. And then you have the legal approach, which defines victims by means of law. Now, I would argue that green victimology should fall in a combination of anthropocentric and legal, so that the social sciences can study the actual victims, green victims, and legal, so that the law scholars can bring about legal changes so to help victims of green victimization. So again, what constitutes a victimization? The original idea was an act or omission that causes harm and an invasion into the self, the core of you. And this harm caused by the victimization causes psychological harm, financial harm, physical harm, emotional harm, and with our post-social media, social harm. It has an effect, it harms you on those levels. Now, I argue we should add environmental harm. Again, you do not want to stay in a place if there is nuclear fallout next to your neighborhood. You don't want to stay or breathe the air of a high polluting factory next to your school or your university, because it has going to harm you on the other levels as well. So why do we add environmental? Again, to stress this point, we as humans live in our environment. Without our environment, we cannot exist. Our social groups interact in an environment, and our environment interact with our social groups. Therefore, we need to place it in the third branch of victimology. And here's some types of environmental victimization, which people don't sometimes realize, or victims. Lack of clean drinkable water, unsafe working conditions, gender-based violence. There is a link between environment and gender-based violence. Deforestation, palm oil and stuff like that leads to climate change. You know, the world is getting warmer. Illegal dumping, lack of environmental protection laws. I mean, the extinction of fauna and flora, 150 to 200 species of plant, insect, birds, and mammals go extinct in every 24 hours. That is a lot. Lack of housing is also a green victimological issue, because if you don't have a housing, you squat, you go to places and you construct shelters for you on places on the environment that might not be safe for you or could have a detrimental effect. Over mining, construction of environmentally unsafe buildings, poor planning of power generation, for example, Fukushima. We had a natural disaster, and the way it was built was not planned to survive the tsunami, and we had leaks. COVID-19 and future pandemics. I read a report recently with all the ice caps melting and with the ice because of climate change and global warming, is that we don't know what viruses are stuck in ice, and what effect those viruses would have the moment those ice melts and this virus is released into the air. So we could have another future pandemic. And then food security is also a part of the victimization under green victimology. Think about it. If you are not food secure, means that people are starving, which means people start to try and farm themselves, make their own food, which has a detrimental effect on the people and the environment. But now the question is, what does this all have in common? All these victimizations in the green sphere. Well, you have multinational corporations, you have governments, you have a lack of political will, and you have organized crime behind all this. So for the future of green victimology, we need to change the definition of what constitutes victimization. We should ground all our research and discussion on green victimology in this branch of victimology, the human rights violations of crime. Why? Because it's got international jurisprudence. You have the UN Declaration on the Rights of Victims of Crime and Abuse of Power. And abuse of power could be an action or an inaction. So if you know, if your government knows or your community know that something bad is going to happen, those in power don't use that, then it's an inaction and an abuse of power. Now, human rights speak about victim rights, and human rights speak about environmental rights. Therefore, if we speak about victim rights, we also need to speak about environmental rights. So human rights and environmental rights. There is national and international victim rights laws. There's national and international environmental laws, and there's national and international human rights laws. So why do we need this? Because we need to hold multinational organized crime groups and governments accountable for environmental victimization and for environmental crimes. But the question always is, how do we do that? You're like, what is there? Because environmental victimization and crime could be argued is a crime against humanity. If you're going to dump nuclear fallout on a piece of land in an ocean, that place stays for hundreds and hundreds of years. You cannot inhabit it. So let's talk about a crime against humanity. War crime speaks to environmental damage. According to the rules of war, you're not allowed to salt the earth. You're not allowed to use certain things when you're conducting wars. You're not allowed to destroy wells and farmlands. So crimes against humanity do not need to target a specific group. Instead, the victim of the attack can be any civilian population, regardless of its affiliation or identity. And another important distinction is that in the case of crimes against humanity, it is not necessary to prove that there is an overall specific intent, unless, so you don't need to prove that the specific intent was to destroy this. You just need to prove that it was destroyed by this person. Now, if you look at crimes against humanity, the law, Article 7, number 1, states you do not need to be linked to an armed conflict and can also occur in peacetime. So a crime against humanity can happen in peacetime. It includes other inhumane acts. And my argument is the destruction of environment is an inhumane act. So just to conclude, so as we see, victimology as a science is relatively young. I mean, 1947, the first written scientific articles are coming out. Only now 2021. The first time the World Society of Victimology happened was in 1979. So victimology as a science is relatively young. And green victimology as a science is even more recent. As we saw, late 90s, green criminology was actually talked about. So should look at green victimization through the lens of human rights, violations, including crime, and of victimization and of reaction. We as victimologists and academics and legal professionals and lobbyists should redefine the concept of victimization and include environmental harm. And we should argue that for inclusion as a crime against humanity. Again, my argument is the moment we move away from the environment, we die. If we go to an international space station, we bring oxygen, we have to make our oxygen. You cannot separate the human from its environment. You cannot separate the environment from the human. We all live in this place and we need to protect it for not just ourselves, but the future generations. Thank you very much for having me.
Cool. Actually, this is very interesting topic. That's this is the first time also I heard about the victimology. So, and then green victimology. It is quite new for me actually, and I believe that the audiences here's interest to something for this material topic. And then in this case, I see that there is kind of type of green environment victim, kind of lack of over mining, right? And then the the perils of the world, like, you know, forestry will be in the problem when the people do not take care of that forest, right? So it is kind of the victimology is new for me. That's new word, or you know, even though you told us that there is in 1947 the first victimology exists in this vocabulary or the language and something like that. Okay, Professor, I think there will be a question from the audiences. Please, the audiences, maybe there are some questions from the chat box, maybe? The committee? Okay, there is a question from the chat box. Hold a second, Prof. Chico.
Okay, so the question is, if I read it correctly, is when you explain about crimes against humanity doesn't need a specific victim. What does that mean and why? So people assume that to commit a crime against humanity, right, that it needs to be a specific victim, like it should be race specific or religion specific or group specific. But actually, no. A crime against humanity is a crime against human. Whether you are a specific religion, a specific, that definitions as per crime does not apply. You as a human, if there is a specific crime because you are a human, whether you are a Jewish person in 1940s Germany, a black person in apartheid South Africa, that definition, it doesn't need to apply. As long as you're a human and you suffer injustice that can be constructed as a crime against humanity, the things that are done against you is inhumane. You don't need to be a specific group, as long as you are, by definition, a human. I hope that clarifies a little bit.
Okay, and then this, I'm curious about the illegal lodging, Prof. Jacko. The ecology is a part of victimology for the, especially in Indonesia, we have bad situations about the forest, especially in Borneo. You know that. Do you think this kind of the victimology or green victimology environment, something like that?
Yeah, this is something green victimology would look at is illegal deforestation, hunting wildlife without permits, illegal mining.
Mine,
You
right?
know,
That's right.
yeah, illegal mining. It's even a problem in South Africa now. Poaching of wild animals, rhinos, wild animals like rhinos are being shot and killed and poached. Armadillos, crocodiles. People are hunting these things without permits and shipping them east. Illegal mining in South Africa is a problem because we have so many mines. So what happens is these mines close because they're not economically viable anymore. But then criminal groups move in and extract what's left. So it damages the environment, but also causes significant, if there's a mine collapse, these people die inside these mines. And same with deforestation. I mean, you need your jungles for oxygen and stuff like that. And at the moment you deforest and you use it for farmland, your rainfall changes and your whole like it goes from um, forest type climate to a grassland, and sometimes the ground itself is not ready to be a grassland because it takes millions of years to become a forest, and you try to make something a grassland in like 2 years, and that causes damage.
Yeah, I think I read here in the what's that an article that victimology is victim behind or picking on victim. It is kind of the there is a victim of the weather, climate, or the illegal logging, and then what's that in the over mining, something like that, and then it appear or occurred another victim, right? Is it the
Yeah.
victimology like that? Sir?
Yeah, so victimology, we look at the general thing about victimology is to look at that invasion into the self,
Invasion,
that
okay.
harm you experience. You know, like I said, it's either environmental harm, psychological. So we look at that. So my studies, when I was a PhD student, I looked at a group of people that were victimized but it wasn't a crime yet. So it was women and ladies on Japanese trains being touched by men. That wasn't the crime yet, but the victimization act was still happening. And then I looked at Indonesia and Jakarta, and it was happening on buses and trains in Jakarta as well.
Okay.
But again, it wasn't illegal. So it wasn't a crime, but it was still a victimization. And then we look at secondary victimization. When you are a victim of a crime or this, and you go to the police, how do the police interact with you? What do the police or the courts say that may cause you damage? For example, in let's say you're in a train in Jakarta and you're wearing a jean and some random guy touches you from behind, and you go to the police and say, that guy touched me, and the policeman says, yeah, but you're wearing a jean. You know, you shouldn't wear a jean. You know, that victim blaming thing, which happens everywhere in the world, which we should be cognizant of. So we look at that as well. Same with being victim.
Okay, I think victimology will become a popular word for currently or right now, because it is a very interesting thing, I think. The committee, is there still questions from the audiences? Okay. Okay, hold on a second, from Chico. Okay, there is questions from Zidan. Hello, I'm Zidan Hetza from Environmental Science Universitas Kuningan, Professor Jeko. I want to ask how humans adapt to changes to natures that are happening today. How the human being adapt to the climate changes.
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, we can adapt to environmental changes, but the environment's not really adapting to the changes we're doing to it. But this climate change thing has a huge impact. I mean, I live in Africa, so when you think about Africa, you don't think about snow. That is not something you think about
Yeah.
when you think about Africa. When you think about Cape Town, you think nice sunny beaches and Table Mountain. This winter we had snow in Cape Town.
Oh, okay.
This is something that 20 years ago would not happen. I mean, we've had since 2016 to 2018, the area in South Africa where I live, we didn't have rain. Now, I know for Indonesians, that is something.
Recording in progress.
Your mind that for 2 years we didn't have rain. We were going through a space without any rain. So it's just hot and then cold with no rain, which had a big effect.
Too windy, I think that.
Yeah. So for that, people had to drill wells and stuff to get water. So that's how we adapt. But the environment changes and it gets warmer. And then certain plant species or stuff that we use for food do not act well in warmer temperatures. A watermelon, for example, can only grow in a certain temperature with a certain amount of water. If you don't give it that temperature of water, it basically becomes sour and you cannot eat it. Okay. Same with corn. If you don't have enough water for corn, it's going to die. So the warmer it gets, we try to adapt, but as it changes, our adaptation also sort of starts to not be functional. Yes, we need to green the environment. We need to stop the temperature going up. We need to look at sustainable energy. For example, solar, wind. Like you guys you're on an island, so you have wave power. South Africa, we're sunny. We need solar power and wind power. We can't rely on coal anymore. And that's one of the things that came out of COP21 was let's stop using coal. Let's look at renewable energies.
Yeah, I think based on the history that only human beings survive in this world, right? Then the kind of the human, what was that? The animal or something else. So the human being is the most survived things in this world, I think, right, Professor Jack? Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, at the moment, it's us and cockroaches. But eventually, if the environment changes more, it's just going to be cockroaches that's left, like that. So, even if you look at Indonesia's monsoon season and tsunamis and stuff, because people are building closer to the coast, more people die when a tsunami hits, more flooding. I mean, I saw Indonesia had this year extreme long monsoon with a lot of flooding happening in certain parts. Same in South Africa. So yeah, we trying to survive, but we're killing the animals that sustain us. So eventually, there's going to be nothing left except.
Okay, and then there's another questions from Chico, from Adrian Hartanto. Dear Prof. Jeko, is wildlife slaughtering in the wild by local community also considered as one of environmental victim.
So that
Is
is
wildlife
quite
slaughtering
interesting.
in the wild by the local community also considered as the one environmental victim?
So that is a quite interesting question with a question as an answer. So when the local community slaughters animals, it's usually for sustaining, for food, just for that community, right? So then it wouldn't be, because it's basically I hunt an animal so that my family can eat. The moment that hunting of those animals become like I hunt the animal not for my family to eat or use the products of the animal, but to illegally sell it to organized group that ship it to Vietnam or China or whatever, then it becomes like an environmental victimization. And communities, usually local communities, know they are cognizant of that wildlife in their area. So they know you can't hunt something this time of year because it's when they have their babies. Or, you know, so that knowledge is there. But the moment we start to go against permits, so for example, you can only hunt this animal from March to June, and you go past that to feed your to sell the on to for economic, then it becomes. But if it's a community that just feeds themselves, then it's not. It's to sustain, and they're usually unsustainable. It's not like you see a community goes and just shoots everything. No, they're usually unsustainable.
Okay.
I hope that answers.
Yeah, okay, I think that's clear enough. Is there still, committee, questions from the audiences? Ms. Nita? That's all? Oh. One more. Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on a second, Prof. Chico. Okay, the last question is from Sela Ranatasia. Then, Professor Chico, how is the legal protection children as a victim of domestic violence? Because sometimes we are, as Indonesian people, kind of respectful or same if we telling everyone or when we telling to the police if we are victim of domestic violence. This is about the legal. Anyway, this is about the legal children victim from of the domestic.
Yeah.
Is it happen? I think in South Africa maybe for like that.
It's something that happens. I mean, it's happening worldwide. That's why we have now the 16th day of activism declared by the UN against gender-based violence. So it happens in South Africa as well. We have something called the Child Justice Act, and we have the Domestic Violence and Related Something Offences Act. So we have legal protection. We have it in law. So children need to be protected legally against XYZ. Intimate partners need to be protected against domestic violence. But what we've seen in South Africa, and this is also a trend worldwide, even if you have the best legal system or the best laws on books, if you do not educate your society that this action is actually wrong and it victimizes and has a negative effect, or you don't cognitize the society that what you're doing is incorrect and you have to do it generationally from one generation to the next. No matter how good your laws are, you're going to still have these victims. Because like she said, if you go to a policeman and say like, I've been a victim of domestic violence.
Yeah.
Why didn't you listen to your husband? Why didn't you listen to your wife? That's not what a policeman should ask. They should say, okay, let me write this down. But because of ingrained societal structures and the social, the constructed social reality, we need to first change that before any big changes. We need to have the laws on the books, but we also need to change the mindset in terms of certain crimes and victimizations.
Okay, yeah, that's this is kind of the the big child problem, actually, especially in Indonesia. Like that is kind of hard, and then they are shy or maybe afraid to say this to the police, actually, or to the law. But anyway, this is the what that. We have to learn about anything, you know. We have to say something honestly to the people who knows about that a lot, I think. Okay, that is the last questions for you, Professor Jeko. And I think on behalf of the committee from Universitas Kuningan University, I would like to say thank you very much for your presentations and being here in this. Here in Indonesia is 15 to 4 p.m. So we've been here for 8 hours here from 7 o'clock. So over there is about 9 o'clock, right? I mean,
it's now close to 11, like 10:41. Yeah.
Oh, 10:41. So okay, that's this daytime, right? Okay. Once again, Prof. Jeko, thank you very much for your presentations and have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for inviting me, and hopefully we can build on this relationship a little bit more.
Thank you. Actually, our Vice Rector, Mrs. Anna Fitri Hindrana. Miss Anna, I want to say something to Pak Jeko. Oh yeah, he say just thank you very much. She said on behalf of the Kuningan University. Thank you very much.
Thank you again,
Professor.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. Jeko, for the very informative and interesting talk, and also Dr. Dadang Solihat as the moderator. Now we have come to the official closing ceremony of the second UNICEF 2021. With this, I would like to invite the Vice Rector for Education, Research, Community Service, and Innovation, Dr. Anna Fitri Hindriana MSI, to deliver closing statement and officially close the conference. To Dr. Anna, time is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that during today's conference, all of you have contained a fruitful discussion in the second University of Kuningan International Conference on System, Engineering and Technology with the main theme Opportunity and Challenge in Environmental, Social Science and Humanity Research during the pandemic COVID-19 era and afterward. We have learned a lot from a session delivered by the amazing speakers. Furthermore, I would like to thank all presenters and participants who have participated in the conference from all over the world. I'm certain that every presenter has presented their amazing work. I hope that through your presentation and discussion, we can contribute to solve any problem we face during the pandemic period and onward. Moreover, I would like to thank to the committee members for their hard work in organizing this conference. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a proverb in bahasa Indonesia. Ada perjumpaan, pasti ada perpisahan. Which means, whenever there is a meeting, a partial shall follow. But it's not for forever, because the third Unicell will be held next year. And finally, I hope you always healthy and happy. Thank you very much. We will see you next year. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anna, for the official closure of the second Unicell 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of our sessions for today's conference. I am Endang Darsi, your Master of Ceremony. On behalf of the committee, I would like to again extend my most sincere gratitude for your enthusiastic participations. We have over 1,000 participants joining this event. Thank you so much, and my apologies for the any inconvenience. So everyone, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great day. See you next year. Bye-bye. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Saya bangga kuliah di sini. Saya mendapatkan ilmu yang banyak, terutama dalam bidang pendidikan.
Mari bergabung dengan Universitas Kuningan untuk mengembangkan potensi diri dan menyongsong masa depan yang lebih baik bersama dengan Universitas Kuningan.
Hidup Uniku, Uniku Jaya, menuju Kuningan, maju.